Good evening and welcome to my next show on herbal medicine and the magic of herbs. My name is Tamara von Forsten, and I have been a naturopath and herbologist for over 40 years. Today, I'd like to talk to you about making your own herbal tinctures and liniments and how to make capsules and pills to try and help remove you from the chemists and the pharmaceutical companies with all their chemicals. Tinctures is incredible these days. It's fast working and easy to take and inexpensive if you make your own. The most expensive part is just the alcohol. In this show, I will be trying to show you and teach you to make one of the most rewarding of all the herb products. I'm excited to be explaining to you the art of tincture making, so let's get going. I hope you enjoy today. I have long been fascinated by the rows of tincture jars that are on my shelves, the most popular form of herbal medication available today. Tinctures are highly concentrated liquid extracts of herbs. They're magically simple to prepare, easy to administer, and retain their medicinal qualities indefinitely. When I make my herbal tinctures, I'm constantly reminded of the art and the ancient tradition of my work. I know that herbalists before me and herbalists after me will continue to capture the essence of herbs in alcoholic solutions, alchemically transforming the medicinal properties into a solvent that will keep it fresh for many years. Tinctures have become a favorite method of preparing herbs for several important reasons. Firstly, for the longevity and the stability. A herb once tinctured will retain its medicinal qualities far longer than in most other preparations. Alcohol tinctures will last for many, many years, some up to 30 to 50 years though. As yet, I cannot say. But tinctures made from vinegar do have a shorter lifespan, but are effective at least up to about 5 years and sometimes even a little bit longer. Secondly, the ease of administering. Once prepared as a tincture form, the herb is ready to administer with no further preparation. The tinctures are dispersed directly under the tongue or mixed with warm water, a tea, or juice. Thirdly, the ease of preparation. Anyone, absolutely anyone is capable of making high-quality tinctures. There is no mystery or complicated process involved in preparing them. What is required is good quality organic herbs, a high-quality solvent, and a measuring cup and a little time. Fourth, storage. This is the important factor. Unlike bulky raw botanicals, tinctures store compactly and conveniently in a small space, always ready to use. They are excellent for first aid kits and for traveling, and keeping them in a dark, closed-away space, they're there for always. And fifth, cost-effective. The tinctures are fairly expensive to purchase because you're paying for the quality time and expertise of the herbalist and wildcrafter who collected the herbs. Excuse me. They are relatively inexpensive to make yourself. If you need to make tinctures over a long period of time for a chronic situation or as a tonic, you should consider making your own. You will save yourself a lot of money and time. Those little 1 ounce bottles that tinctures frequently come in can get quite expensive. And sixth, they are personalized formulas. As you learn to work with various herbs, you will develop favorites, ones that associate best with your well-being. You will have the ability to make your own tincture combinations and your specialized formulas. And seventh, the magic of selecting the herbs. Almost all herbal tinctures, well, with a correct solvent, herbs can be tinctured as a ready-made formula or tinctured as single herbs and combined later in formulas. Most herbalists prefer to tincture herbs as single extracts. This gives them greater control over the water-alcohol ratio for individual herbs and their constituents. It also allows them greater flexibility when creating formulas from single herb extracts. Though I appreciate the reasoning for single herb extracts, I sometimes prefer tincturing my formulas together. Instead of being single components, they seem to become one and blend like a marriage. As you can tell, there is no right way method. Experiment and discover for yourself which method that you like best, or use them both. An important factor about making your own tincture is selecting the menstruum. A menstruum is the solvent used to extract the biochemical constituents of the plant and to preserve the resulting solution. There are basically three menstruums used in tincture preparation, that is alcohol, glycerin, and vinegar. Like anything, there are pros and cons to each, and like anything, everyone has their own personal favorite and reasons and considers it the best. So let's look at these three different menstruums. First of all, let's look at the main one, which is alcohol as a menstruum. Now, alcohol is a potent, effective menstruum that extracts fat, resins, waxes, most alkaloids, as well as many other plant components. It is considered by most to be the king of all the solvents available and to have the greatest range of uses. Furthermore, alcohol serves as an excellent preservative, maintaining the integrity of the herbs for many years. Alcohol tinctures are rapidly assimilated by the body, and their effects are felt almost immediately. When using alcohol, water is naturally included as part of the menstruum because water is a major component of alcohol. Now, this is excellent because both substances are needed to extract the various plant chemicals. The ratio of water to alcohol determines the actual menstruum. The standard menstruum is 50% alcohol to 50% water. That's a 1-to-1 ratio. Though this varies with the different plant materials, any good 100 proof alcohol naturally supplies this ratio with you having to do anything. I generally prefer a higher water to alcohol ratio and usually use either a 60 to 80 proof brandy or vodka, which gives me a 30 to 40% alcohol to a 60% water ratio. There are several kinds of alcohol used for tincture making. Brandy, vodka, and gin are mostly favorites because each can be purchased 100 proof. It is also fairly easy to find these in good quality. When making tinctures, do not scrimp on the quality. Buy the best alcohol you are able to afford and use the best organic herbs available. For preservative properties and extraction purposes, you must use at least 25% alcohol by volume. Some herbalists prefer making tinctures from 190 proof alcohol. That's right, a whopping 95% alcohol and only 5% water ratio. Obviously, with this high concentrate of alcohol, one would need to adjust the percentage of water, and that's exactly why some herbalists prefer working with 190 proof alcohol. They have more control of how much water they can add for extracting the specific components of each herb. This is especially valuable in fresh plant tinctures, where the water ratio of the plant varies so greatly. The most common sources of pure grain alcohol are Everclear and Clear Spring, which are available in liquor stores in some places around the world. In most states, it is illegal to sell it, and one must have a pharmaceutical license to procure it. I have included instructions for working with 190 proof alcohol, but frankly, there is too much math involved for my uneducated head. I have found those tinctures made by the simplest process 1 method to be every bit as powerful and effective as those made by the standardized process 2 method. If using an alcoholic tincture for medicine, there are ways you can dissolve the alcohol before use. The most common method is to bring 1/4 cup of water to a boil. Turn the heat off and add the dosage of tincture necessary. Alcohol evaporates with heat. Within 5 to 8 minutes, most of the alcohol will be evaporated. Another method that a dear friend told me what she used for her baby is to place the tincture in a spoon, then burn off the alcohol by lighting it on fire. Herbal flambe. I have not tried this method, but it sounded exciting and sounded different. So let's look at the different types of menstruums. Aqueous alcohol, which is usually 50 to 70%. Effectively, it extracts alkaloids, salts, most glucosides, sugars, vitamins, enzymes, some tannins, and bitter compounds. An absolute alcohol extracts is 195 proof. It extracts alkaloids, glycosides, volatile oils, waxes, resins, fats, some tannins, balsam, sugars, and vitamins. So let's now look at glycerin as a menstruum. Glycerin is a sweet, mucilaginous constituent of all fats and oils of both animal and plant origin. A highly nutritive substance, glycerin serves as both a solvent and a preservative in tincture making. It is extremely sweet, which makes it a wonderful solvent for children and is very soothing to the mucous membrane lining of our systems. It is also excellent as a tincture base for people who do not wish to use alcohol, though its solvent abilities are not as strong as alcohol. Though it provides good preservative properties and dissolves many plant constituents, it does not dissolve resinous or oily components, alkaloids, or salts. To make a glycerin tincture, use 4 parts of water to 1 part of glycerin. That's a 4-to-1 ratio. The rest of the process remains exactly the same as making a tincture. When buying glycerin, be certain it is 100% vegetable glycerin and it is of a much higher quality. Glycerin extracts sugars, enzymes, glycosides, bitter compounds, saponins, and tannins. So now let's look at vinegar as a menstruum. Though alcohol is the menstruum of choice these days and rightfully has earned its popularity through its effectiveness, vinegar is also a suitable menstruum. Though it is not as strong as alcohol and does not break down all of the plant constituents as well, there are several advantages to using vinegar as your solvent or choice. Vinegar is a food, 100% non-toxic and tolerable by almost every human. It helps regulate acid-alkaline balance in our bodies and is an excellent tonic for the digestive tract. It also tastes good and can be used as a food. Vinegar tinctures are an excellent alternative for alcohol-sensitive people and can be used for children, alcoholics, and people who are adverse to drinking alcohol. I recommend using vinegar as a base for tonic tinctures, those tinctures that are to be used over a long period of time to strengthen and build the system. These tonics become part of our food and daily fare. Vinegar is superior as a base for this type of tincture formula because the solvent is part of the tonic. For strong medicinal type formulas, I recommend alcohol as your solvent. They are extremely potent and quick acting in the human body. I actually prefer many vinegar tinctures. I love the taste of the herbs in vinegar, and I often add a little honey and some cayenne to the formula. It is delicious. I like to consider my medicine as food. I can use these tinctures on my salads or sip a small amount as a tonic drink. Though they may not be as concentrated as alcohol tinctures, I trust in my body's ability to discern what it needs and to use it efficiently. There is some controversy as to the shelf life of a vinegar tincture. Most literature reports that vinegar tinctures have a short shelf life up to 6 months before deteriorating. My personal experience is that of many of my peers is that have proven that this theory is inaccurate. Vinegar tinctures will last far longer than a few months. If stored in a cool, dark place, they will last for years. I have vinegar tinctures that are up to 5 years old and still in excellent condition. But you experiment. Let me know your experience with this if you can. Vinegar extracts the sugars, tannins, vitamins, some minerals, glycosides, and bitter compounds. So how do we prepare tinctures? Well, tinctures, for all their effectiveness and power, are easily made. The method I prefer and will share with you first is the simplest or traditional method. It is the method I first teach all of my students because of the simplicity of it and because I have found it to be every bit as effective as what it is referred to as the standardized method. So let's look at process 1, the simplest method. Now, I'm sure you'll not have any difficulties in following these simple instructions, but if I have left a question unanswered, or if you do run into problems, do not hesitate to contact me. I feel the best way to learn about herbs is to work with them. Make your own salves, your own balms, oils, tinctures, teas, etc. You will be stimulated to learn about each herb you are using as you touch, smell, taste, and use them. You will then become magically and spiritually connected to each living herb, and you will then get to know the goddess. First thing, chop your vegetables finely. Now, some people prefer to put the herb in the blender with a little of the solvent and blend until the herb is like mush. This breaks down the fiber down and aids the extraction process. I have found that chopping the herb is just as effective, but again, try and experiment. But here again, you can get to develop your preferred methods. I would definitely encourage you to try both ways a few times to see how much each method works for you. It is essential also that you choose only good quality organic herbs to tincture. Your tincture will only be as good as the herbs you use. Whenever possible, use fresh herbs when tincturing. This is one of the key advantages of tincturing. You can pick and process the herbs fresh, thus preserving all of their fresh, living properties. However, high-quality dried herbs are also excellent to tincture as well. When using fresh plants, it is best to use a high percentage of alcohol, as freshly picked plants generally have about 3 times the moisture content than the dried plant. One method I sometimes use is to gently wilt the fresh plant. I pick it in the cool parts of the morning, then allow it to lay out in a shaded warm spot during the day. Most of the water evaporates, yet the plant still retains all of its fresh properties, but in a wilted manner and in a drier manner. Secondly, I pour the menstruum over the herbs. Then I choose a jar with a wide mouth opening and a clean seal. Be sure to check the lid. If there is a cardboard ring, remove it. The jar should be just big enough to hold all of your herbs. Place the herbs in the jar and pour over the menstruum over it, being sure that the menstruum completely covers the herb by at least ½ inch to 1 inch. Seal with a tight-fitting, clean lid that is hermetically sealed. If using vinegar as your menstruum, warm the vinegar a little tiny bit first. This facilitates the release of the herbal constituents and makes it easier for them. People always ask what proportions of alcohol to use to use. Well, there's an official amount, though it varies, but I seldom use proportions in this way, using the proportions that I've said before. Just enough alcohol to completely cover your herb renders the strongest, most effective tinctures. But for measurement's sake, here are a couple of the official proportions. For A, 1 to 2 ounces of herb to 1 pint of menstruum. B, with fresh herbs, the weight of the herb equals the volume by 8 of the alcohol, which is a 1-to-1 ratio. Or the weight of the herb equals half the volume by weight of the alcohol, which is a 1-to-2 ratio. Place the jars in a warm, dark place and let it macerate for 2 to 6 weeks. Macerate is the term used to define the process of the herbs soaking in the menstruum. In Western herbology, maceration usually occurs within 2 weeks. In traditional Chinese herbology, herbs are left to macerate for months, sometimes even years. That allows you a lot of leeway as to time restrictions. In my own preparations, I have found that the longer the plant macerates, the better and the stronger it is. I usually do it for 6 to 8 weeks. I feel 2 weeks is too short a period, but again, there is room for your experimentation as well here. By the way, for as long as I can recall, there has been controversy over whether to macerate the tinctures in the dark or sunlight. Growing up in a witch family, I learned to do it in the sunlight and did it for several years, invoking the Lord of the Sun to bless the herb as it did in life. Then I heard from several of my peers that alcohol can explode in the sunlight, and therefore it is better to macerate in the shade. But I ask you, have you ever heard of anyone's tincture bottle exploding in the sunlight? I certainly have not. And I have been asking for a lot of years. So I think I will go back to the sunlight again and honor the Sun Lord. Also, turn your jars over upside down daily or shake your herbs daily. And this is not absolutely necessary, but still a vital part of tincture making. I highly recommend in the daily shaking of your tincture bottles if possible. This not only prevents the herbs from becoming a solid mass in the bottom of the jar, but prevents the proper process of extraction. It also encourages you to energize your medicines. This is the time when you can get to bring some of that old magic, some of that witchcraft back into your medicine making. I even make my tinctures out at the full moon to charge them with the rays of the moon for extra healing benefits. During the shaking process, you can also sing to your jars. Stir them in the moonlight, shake them in the sunlight, wave feathers over them, blessing them, place crystals around them, and burn some incense around them to consecrate and prepare them for what power or magic you wish them to be. There are some of the skills of the advanced magical herbal professional I was alluding to above. Use this time to enchant yourself and to create super quality good medicine with a touch of your magic. Because we know that the distant luminous moon, waxing and waning on its monthly course, has influences on our lives and work on this earth, it is proven wise to begin herbal preparations on the new moon, which is the waxing energy, and complete them on the full moon, which is the culminating, illuminating energy. This is a powerful way to weave the forces of the lunar energy into our healing work. Sometimes I let it sit for over 3 moons. New moon to full moon, new moon to full moon, new moon to full moon. So it's completely charged by the triple aspect of the goddess. The next stage is at the end of the appropriate time, strain the herb from the alcohol. When I had my lab at my center, The Alchemist, we had a huge, lovely, large hydraulic press. It worked great for large amounts of tinctures. But for home amounts, I always did and still do prefer to press by hand. Your hand muscles get really strong like a masseuse. I generally use a large stainless steel strainer lined with fine mesh cheesecloth or cotton muslin. You use the cloth to wring out every bit of the extract. Another home tool that I love is the potato ricer. I line it with fine mesh cheesecloth and push the lever down, and it is really a simple variation of a fancier press. I encourage you to try it. It is great for pressing other herbal preparations also. Compost the leftover herbs residue and save that sweet liquid. Now, an important thing, the storage, bottling, and labeling of your tinctures. Tinctures store best in a cool shaded area and or in a dark amber bottles. They should be stored away from light and heat. Store large amounts of tinctures in large bottles and rebottle into 1 or 1/4 ounce droplet bottles as needed. Tincture bottles must also be properly labeled. A lot of people have home computers now, and you can easily design a nice label on them, or you can design a label by hand. Take it to a print shop and have copies made, or make one that's hand-drawn, hand-painted. Always include on your label the name of the formula, the date made, the percentage of alcohol and the water to alcohol ratio, the ingredients, and the dosage that is required for each of these. Range of dosage. Now, this is a tricky as the dosage range varies so greatly depending on the herb, formula, person, and illness. But I usually suggest 1/4 teaspoon tincture 3 times daily for a chronic, long-standing illness and or for tonic purposes. For acute situations, I generally suggest 1/2 to 1/4 teaspoon every 1/2 to 1 hour. Now, both of these dosages would be modified for children to at least half that amount, or 13 to 60 drops. Now, have you ever sat and tried to count 60 drops of tincture or even 15 drops? It's too bloody hard. A drop full is about 1/4 or 1/2 a teaspoon. Tinctures can be administered under the tongue or diluted in water, tea, or juice. They may also be used externally as a liniment or rub. So a standardized method, well, a common criticism leveled against herbalism by the medical or pharmacological establishment is that the potency of the herbs can vary from product to product. That's true. But herbalists have attempted to remedy this by adjusting the potency of a tincture to a known and standard value, especially with organic herbs. The following method is the system that some herbalists have adopted in an attempt to create some kind of standardization in herbal tincture making. However, the title is a misnomer, to be sure. Although there has been considerable effort to standardize tincture making, the higher number of rebellious, independent, right-brained herbalists makes this a monumental task. Also, the very nature of the herbs resists standardizing. The time of the day collected, season of the year, location of the plants, seasonal weather patterns, and skill and integrity of the wildcrafter are all variables that cannot be standardized. Others made synthetically. No universal standardization is ever possible in plant tincturing. There have been significant inroads made, however, and to the extent that standardization exists, I will explain how it works. Be assured that until all the pharmacopoeias agree on the same water to alcohol ratio for each herb, there will not even be the semblance of the standardized sense. There are two different aspects or ratios that you must understand to make standardized tinctures. The first is the ratio of the herb to the liquid, which is the menstruum. The second is the ratio within the menstruum itself. The menstruum is made up of water and alcohol in a specific ratio. For the purposes of clarity, I will refer to the herb to menstruum ratio, written herb menstruum, as ratio A, and the water to alcohol ratio, water alcohol, as ratio B. After you determine ratio A and ratio B for your particular tincture, you put the two together and presto, you have a standardized tincture. So let's look at ratio A, herb menstruum. There are three standard ratios in use today. They are determined by the type of herb you are using. These include the dry herb. Now, if you are using dry herbs in your tinctures, generally use 1 part herb or dried herb to 5 parts menstruum. The herbs are measured by weight in grams, and the menstruum is measured by volume in milliliters. Thus, for every 1 gram of dry herb, use 5 mils of menstruum. Secondly, if you're using fresh herbs, well, if you're using fresh herbs in your tincture, generally use 1 part herb to 2 parts menstruum. For each 1 gram of fresh herbs, use 2 mils of menstruum. And for resinous herbs, if you're using resinous herbs like pine in your tincture, generally use 1 part herb to 4 parts menstruum. And for each 1 gram of resinous herb, use 4 mils of menstruum. That is all there is to a ratio A. The other step is to determine ratio B, which actually gives us our menstruum. So ratio B, as I said, the water alcohol is the menstruum. Excuse me. This ratio can vary, depend on the herbs you are using and the chemical substances you wish to extract. There should be an individual, unique water to alcohol ratio for each and every herb you tincture. In fact, to be really technical, there should be an ideal ratio for each chemical substrate that you wish to extract. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately for the future of herbalism, no such ratios are universally agreed upon now and probably never ever will be. Thus, standardized tincturing is a fantasy of the left brain orientation of our society. Once, however, you determine the ratio you wish to use, making the actual menstruum will be easy or more difficult depending on the actual ratio you choose and whether it can be commercially bought or requires you to mix it yourself. The most common standard ratio is 1:1 or 1 part water to 1 part alcohol. It will start with a simple way, then tackle the more complex technique, hopefully only for your reference library. First, we determine how much menstruum we need by using ratio A, weigh out your herb in grams, and multiply that number by the ratio determined by whether the herb is dry, fresh, or resinous. This will give you the number of mils of menstruum that you actually need. So let's go through this a little bit easier. Example 1. If you need 12 grams of dried herb, using a 1:5 ratio, that means 12 grams by 5 equals 60 mils of menstruum. Example 2, if you have 22 grams of resinous herb, using a 1:4 ratio, that's 22 grams by 4 equaling 88 mils of menstruum. When you have determined the amount of menstruum needed, the next step is to decide what water-alcohol ratio is best for the particular herb. This is where the pharmacopoeias are not always in agreement, and thus the standardization. So the following here that I'm going to give you now provides the water to alcohol information. So 1:1 of water alcohol is 50% water, 50% alcohol, and that's in 100 proof alcohol. 1:2 is 33% water, 67% alcohol, which is 134 proof. 1:3 ratio is 25% water, 75% alcohol, and that's 150 proof. 1:4 is 20% water, 80% alcohol, and 160 proof. If we're looking at 55-45, then you're looking at 55% water, 45% alcohol, and that's 90 proof. A 60-40 ratio is 60% water, 40% alcohol, and that's 80 proof alcohol. 70-30 ratio is 70% water, 30% alcohol, and 60% or 60 proof alcohol. When you determine ratio B, the water alcohol ratio, look on that chart, understand those things of what ratio it is, and if you can buy alcohol in the proof you want, all you have to do is measure the number of mils you need, and that is your menstruum all made up. Very simple, very easy. So try to remember that. Example, again, the particular herb you are tincturing works best with 40% alcohol menstruum. Then you have 12 grams of dried herb from example 1 above. Look on the chart and see that 40% alcohol is the same as 80 proof. Go to any liquor store and buy 80 proof vodka, brandy, or gin. Measure out 60 mils, which is 12 grams by 5 of it, and ratio B, your menstruum is completed. So it's quite simple. All right. If you buy the proof alcohol you desire, this is all there is to standardized tincturing. If, however, you cannot find the exact proof or percentage of alcohol you need the procedure for making the menstruum, ratio B becomes more complicated. More commercial alcohol, also called ethyl alcohol, this is 190 proof or 95% alcohol. You can buy 100% pure, but it is not healthy for tincturing. Thus, it's strongly recommended not to use. Because many herbalists are very tight-brained or right-brained, the mere sight of mathematical formulas strikes fear in their hearts, and their brains refuse to go further. I promise you this is relatively easy if you will stay with me and try. The several steps in this process are pretty simple. So it's quite understandable to know. Now, I'm going to give you some suggested tinctures here to make. Nervine tincture is excellent for insomnia, nervous disorders, headaches, and skin eruptions due to nervous disorders. You would have 2 parts of skullcap, 2 equal parts of 1 part of wild lettuce, valerian, hops, and peppermint. As a brain tonic, this is one of the first tinctures I give my students. It's not only fun to make, after all, we could all use a little brain tonic, but really does strengthen and nourish the brain. Try it for at least 3 weeks and see if you do not notice a subtle but definite difference in memory and clarity. Most of my students report they suddenly find themselves remembering little things they normally forget, or dream recall becomes better, or they find easier access to memories from the past. So what you need is 2 parts of gotu kola, 1 part equally of ginkgo leaf and peppermint, and half a part of rosemary or sage. Simple again. It is difficult to get good quality gotu kola in some parts of America as it's poor quality, so be careful with that. If you want to make a tincture for internal infections, then you have 1 part equally of golden seal, echinacea, osha, and myrrh, and 1/4 part of cayenne. If you want a high calcium tincture, which is excellent for bones, nails, teeth, and hair, a good high calcium formula is quite simple and is 1 part each of comfrey leaf and oat straw and horsetail, and 2 parts of nettle leaf. If you want to make a tincture for circulation or for your heart, then equal 1 part of motherwort and valerian to 2 parts of hawthorn berry and leaf, and a 1/4 part of cayenne. If you want a tincture for dreams, for lucid dreaming or something, then you have 2 parts of damiana, 1 part equally of mugwort and cava, or half a part equally of lavender and rosemary. Any individual herb, can be made into a tincture. After your individual herb tincture has been prepared, you may mix them as needed into formulas. Just a couple of last pointers to remember when making tinctures. Firstly, make only small amounts to begin with until you get used to it. Though the recipe calls for 1 to 2 ounces of herbs and 1 pint of solvent, it is seldom you will need pints of any tinctures. Make half a pint or less. Secondly, be certain to research each herb you use firstly. Do not use a herb just because you have heard it is good. Do your research, understand it, feel and sense its energy. Do you know about oat straw, horsetail, hawthorn berry, damiana, skullcap, mugwort, gotu kola? Do you understand the contradictions, the effects or side effects that it can create or cause for some people? If not, look these herbs up before using them and adding them to your card, file, or journal. So this is important for you to understand this. I hope you understand that next session that I'm going to give, the next show, I'm going to talk about making some balms or liniments and oils and that you could have in your home as well. I hope you've enjoyed this little one on tinctures. It's one of my favorites. I love tinctures, and let me know how you go. I wish you all the best. I hope you go well with it. Connect with those herbs. And as you do, connect with the goddess. I give you my heart. Blessed be, everyone. See you next time.